sudden, violent explosion of noise. Carter reached the edge of the barbed wire, screaming at the top of his lungs. "Well, you numbskull, you lame brain. How could you pull such a boneheaded stunt?" Gomer scrambled backward out from under the wire, dusting himself off, looking sheepish. "Well, I am sorry, Sergeant Carter. I do not know how in the world I could have done a thing like that. Of all the knucklehead things to do," Carter bellowed, pointing a trembling finger at the resting dummy grenade. "What if that had been a live grenade? You would have blown half the platoon to kingdom come. You stupid, careless idiot." Aunt Bee marched forward, her umbrella waving like a sword. "What is the matter with you? Why are you shouting like that? Do not tell me you are angry with this." "Poor boy again." Carter spun around, realizing his mistake too late. The act was broken. He was caught red-handed, screaming like a maniac on the exact day he needed to be an angel. "Oh, no. No, I am not angry," he stammered, his face pale. "Not really angry." But Gomer, sensing that Aunt Bee was about to tear into his sergeant, stepped between them. He looked at Aunt Bee with a serious, earnest expression that she had rarely seen on his normally cheerful face. "But Aunt Bee," Gomer said firmly, "he has got a right to be angry. I did a very wrong thing." Carter blinked, surprised by the defense. He decided to play along, adopting a mock scolding tone. "That is right, Pyle, you did. Naughty, naughty." "I am sorry, Sergeant Carter," Gomer said sincerely. "I really am sorry." Carter looked at Aunt Bee, attempting a weak, apologetic smile. "Sorry? You are sorry? Oh, that is good. That is very good. I am talking to him real nice. Am I not, Mrs. Taylor? Nice and soft and kind." Aunt Bee crossed her arms. "Well, it is an improvement over yesterday. That is an improvement." "Uh-huh," Carter nodded. "And this is the kind of sergeant you would like your friend Gomer-Pyle to have? A nice, soft-spoken sergeant." "As a matter of fact, I would—" she sniffed. Carter looked at the dummy grenade, then looked at Gomer. The reality of what his job actually entailed crashed down upon him. He could not do it. He could not pretend that war was a polite game, even for the sake of his career. It was dangerous, deadly work, and pretending otherwise was a disservice to his men. Carter straightened his posture, his eyes hardening with resolve. He looked Aunt Bee dead in the eye. "Well, I cannot do it," Carter said, his voice quiet but thick with undeniable authority. "I am not that kind of sergeant, and I never will be." Aunt Bee gasped, offended. "Sergeant Carter." Carter turned back to Gomer, his voice rising back to its natural, commanding boom. "And, Pyle, if you think I'm going to drop this, you are nuts. I am going to have you down there digging ditches and doing push-ups until you are blue in the face. You dropped a grenade. In combat. That mistake cost lives. Do you understand me?" "Yes, sir," Gomer shouted back, standing at strict attention. "You got that?" "Yes, sir." Aunt Bee clutched her chest. "Well, I never—" "Oh, Gomer, you poor dear." She reached out to comfort him, but Gomer gently pulled away. He looked at her with profound respect and maturity. "Really, Aunt Bee," Gomer said softly, "there are a few things about Sergeant Carter and the Marines that you ought to know." Aunt Bee paused, seeing the deep sincerity in his eyes. She lowered her parasol. "What do you mean, Gomer?" Gomer pointed to the dummy grenade. "If that had been a real bomb, and I dropped it because I was waving, my friends would have been hurt. Maybe worse. Sergeant Carter yells at me because he wants me to remember. He wants it burned into my brain, so that if we ever have to go to war, I will not make that mistake when it counts. He yells because he wants me to stay alive. Aunt Bee, and I am grateful for it." Aunt Bee looked from Gomer's earnest face to the rigid, serious posture of Sergeant Carter. For the first time, the blinders of her Mayberry sensibilities fell away. She saw the heavy burden Carter carried, the immense responsibility of turning innocent young men into survivors. She slowly lowered her head, a blush of deep embarrassment creeping up her neck. I see," she whispered. Chapter 7. That evening, The recreation room at Camp Henderson was packed tight. Dozens of Marines were crowded around the small black and white television set mounted in the corner. The room was buzzing with nervous energy. Sergeant Carter sat in the front row, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. His jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. This was it, the moment of truth. His career hung in the balance of whatever Beatrice Taylor was about to say to thousands of viewers across the state. "Hey, Pyle," one of the Marines called out from the back. "Are you absolutely sure your Aunt Bee is going to be on television tonight?" Gomer, sitting beside Carter, nodded happily. "Well, she said she was. She called me from the hotel right before she left for the studio." "Hey, you guys cool it," another Marine hissed, pointing at the screen. "The show is starting." Carter leaned forward, a bead of sweat tracing a slow path down his temple. "Well, has she been on yet?" "No, not yet," Gomer replied. He noticed Carter's rigid posture and stood up. "Sergeant Carter, if you want to sit down, you can have my chair." "I am sitting, Pyle." Carter snapped. "Just watch the screen." The television flickered, and the handsome face of Johnny Clark appeared, sitting behind a sleek desk. "Our next guest," Johnny announced smoothly, "is a lady I had on the radio program yesterday when we were interviewing out at Camp Henderson. She had some very interesting comments about her visits at the military base. I invited her down to the studio tonight to tell us a little more about her experiences. How about a nice, warm welcome from Mrs. Beatrice Taylor, visiting all the way from Mayberry, North Carolina?" The studio audience applauded as Aunt Bee walked onto the stage. She wore a lovely dress and a modest string of pearls, looking the picture of sweet, grandmotherly grace. She sat down in the chair next to Johnny's desk, offering a polite wave to the camera. "Hi," she said softly. In the recreation room, the men whistled and cheered for Gomer's aunt. Carter simply groaned, sinking lower in his chair. "Well, here we go, boys. Ma Barker is ready to sing." On the screen, Johnny Clark leaned forward, looking intently at his guest. "Now, Mrs. Taylor, when we talked yesterday, your complaints centered mainly around a specific superior officer, his sergeant, Sergeant Carter." Carter squeezed his eyes shut, preparing for the fatal blow. "That is right," Aunt Bee said, her voice clear and steady. "You said he was unfair and entirely unreasonable," Johnny prompted, hoping for the fireworks from yesterday. "Do you remember telling me that?" "Yes, I remember," Aunt Bee nodded. "Now, would you mind telling our television audience about your experience with this sergeant?" Aunt Bee folded her hands neatly in her lap. She looked directly into the camera. "Well, when I first met Sergeant Carter, he just impressed me as a terribly ill-tempered man. He was shouting and yelling at my friend and ordering him to do things that seemed completely unnecessary to me. Acting like a tyrant, in other words." Johnny supplied helpfully. "Yes," she agreed. "When I went back today, the exact same thing happened again. There he was, shouting and yelling and screaming in a way that I thought was entirely uncalled for. So I got the distinct impression of a totally unreasonable and impossible man." In the recreation room, Carter buried his face in his hands. It was over. He would be peeling potatoes in Alaska by Tuesday. "I see," Johnny said on the television. "However, I understand you had a change of heart?" Carter peeked through his fingers. "Yes, I did," Aunt Bee said, her expression softening into a look of profound respect. "Later, I had a long talk with Gomer, and he pointed out some very important things to me that I had not realized before. You see, I was judging military things from a civilian point of view." The recreation room fell dead silent. Every Marine leaned closer to the screen. "And what did Gomer point out?" Johnny asked, clearly intrigued. He pointed out that no matter how loud Sergeant Carter screams or yells, it is only to make him a better Marine. Aunt Bee explained beautifully. "You mean Gomer does not mind the screaming and yelling?" Johnny asked, surprised. "No, no, heavens no," she smiled. "He is quite used to it. He says that whenever Sergeant Carter makes him move sand piles or do push-ups, It is only to help them remember not to do the same dangerous wrong thing twice. He does it to keep them safe. Johnny Clark nodded thoughtfully.